Hello everyone and welcome to the MPL Spark Split Week 2. We've got some spicy decks to take a look at. Lucas Esper Berthoud's Esper deck. Fancy that. He's got Esper in his name and he's playing it. I like that. But the other thing I liked as well in this deck, you can see it's the typical Espert Midrange deck. It's using a whole bunch of multicolored cards. You've got your Hero of Precinct 1 to generate extra value from the 1/1 white human creature tokens. But the one thing I really liked about this deck was Dreadhorde Invasion. Now, what this does is at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose a life, you amass 1, and then when you have a zombie token with 6 power or greater, when it attacks against lifelink, you gain a whole bunch of life. Now, this works really, really well in conjunction with Enter the God Eternals, because you can get to that 6/6 really fast. The usual suspects in the Esper hero deck are, of course, making an appearance again in Thought Erasure. You've got your Dovin's Veto, you've got your Thief of Sanities, Teferi Time Raveler, who's no surprise in this week at all. We've got the Mortifiers, we have Oath of Kaya as well, just an extra little bit of, you know, reach, dealing 3 damage and gaining you 3 life, also protecting your planeswalkers, you know, gaining yourself some life as well, and dealing 2 damage to the player whenever they attack the planeswalkers. We also have the Hostage Taker, which is good at removing any threats on your opponent's side of the board and playing it as your own. We've got a Sovereign Vengeful Bloodlord that gives you just a little bit of extra reach, pinging your opponent in the face, gaining 1 life, and also giving you the ability to return a creature card from your graveyard. Then on the top of the scale, we've got a Teferi Hero of Dominaria, who we haven't actually seen that often, but he's making an appearance in Berthoud's deck, as well as Enter the God Eternals, like we mentioned earlier, working really, really well with that Dreadhorde Invasion, getting your army nice and big, gaining you that life, and just putting massive threats on the board. Taking a look at the sideboard, we see the different answers for the different matchups. The control matchup, you're going to want to bring in the Duresses, the Dovin's Veto, D-Spark, Davriel Rogue Shadow Mage, and then against the aggressive matchups, we've got the Moment of Craving, we've got Deputy of Detention, Basilica Bellhaunt, all creatures that help you to remove a threat off the board and gain you just that little bit of extra life. So there you have it, friends. That's Lucas Esper Berthoud's Esper deck. I think we're going to see some fun shenanigans from this one, so let's send it back to the casters.
Thank you, Alias V, for that wrap-up of Berthoud's deck. And thanks to Rich Hagen for going over the rest of the Pearl division. That was great to have that recap there, see the matches we didn't really get to go over in real time here. If you're just joining us, this is the MPL Weekly, where we're going to go over the matches that were notable for the week. I'm Becca Scott, Brian Kibler, and Steve Sunu. I messed up your last name.
Steve okay. Something. I don't
Steve
know.
something. It doesn't matter. It's fine. Just call me Steve. It's all good.
Steve S. All right, guys, we have another interesting matchup. So we just saw the Espert Midrange again, but then Yukuhiro, who Berthoud's going to be playing against, has a Bant Midrange.
Yeah, Yukuhiro is very well known for sort of brewing up unusual types of decks. He was actually the only player to play Bant last week. He's playing a different version of Bant this week, and it's very similar to the ones we've actually been seeing so far throughout the day.
Yeah, and of course, we just saw Lucas Esper Berthoud, also a lawyer, fun fact. But he's going to be on the good old Esper Midrange plan with a little bit of spicy differences from the one we just saw from Berthoud.
Do you think everybody saw Ken's deck last week and got excited, wanted to get on the Bant train?
Well, I mean, Ken's deck last week was very sort of proliferate token based. It had the even the Chamber Sentry.
We can see it right now.
Going on. Well, this is the deck he's playing this week.
Yeah, it's different.
So we'll take a look at that. It is pretty similar to the versions that we've seen played so far by closest, I think, to Eric Froehlich's list. Is a little bit different. I think he has a bit more in terms of mana acceleration and the full 4 copies of the God Eternal Oketra, which makes very good use of those additional mana creatures sort of in the mid to late game by giving you extra bodies from those.
All right, so let's see Yukuhiro's deck for this week and see if there's any changes that we noticed there.
Well, it's very different. Yeah. Fundamentally, hugely different. Last week was, a Pelt Collector, proliferate type deck, right?
Watley's Raptors as a key card in the deck, yeah.
And this week, we see him going with the 4 copies of Lenorel, 4 copies of Incubation Druid, 4 copies of Paradise Druid. He really wants to get hit the ground running and start playing those higher cost spells off his mana creatures. And as I was mentioning, crucially, he has the full 4 copies of God Eternal Oketra. So in the mid to late game, if he has an Oketra, that means, okay, I play my Oketra, and then I play a couple of mana creatures that I may have been just holding in my hand to get a huge burst of board presence from that trigger that gives you a 4/4 zombie every time you play a creature.
And of course, as you mentioned, very, very close to Eric Eric Froelic's deck with the Frilled Mystic tech, and of course that Teferi Time Raveler and that Vivian Champion of the Wilds combo. Gotta love it.
And, of course, Alias just walked us through Berthoud's deck, but we're going to take one quick peek again. Mr. Lucas Esper playing that Esper.
Yeah, last week he was playing Gruul, now he's playing Esper. Seems more appropriate.
Yeah.
But this is one of the more interesting versions of Espert Midrange. We did hear Alias talk about how the Dreadhorde Invasion is kind of a unique take on this, which every turn you amass one and lose life, kind of like Bitter Blossom of old for people who may have been playing for a long time. But crucially, this rather than making a bunch of small things, makes one big thing. And if your opponent is just trying to remove your creatures with removal spells, say they have a bunch of Moment of Cravings and well, I was going to say Mortifies. Mortify can kill this. But it's a bunch of spot removal that isn't Mortify. They can't deal with the invasion itself, and you just continue to sort of pile on to that army and ultimately make it big and lifelinking.
All right. Well, I wonder if Yukuhiro's more interesting, unique deck is how it's going to do about that against that Espert Midrange that we just saw Brian Branduin with a version of, a different version, but similar, did very well with.
From an archetype perspective, both of these are decks we've seen so far, but they're both a little bit of a different take. Yukuhiro's deck has a bit more mana acceleration, so he is really trying to push to those, specifically Oketra, right? A lot of the versions have 2 Oketra. He has 4. He has 12 mana creatures compared to 8. So he's really looking to ramp up to the Cat God and try and power his opponents down. Whereas I feel like Berthoud's deck, he's very much leaning very heavily on Hero of Precinct 1 in this matchup, because the Bant Midrange deck, it doesn't really deal with stuff well. You have Teferi, and the Teferi can always give you kind of an answer to whatever. But this version in particular, he has 2 Deputy of Detention, right, and the 3 Teferis, and that's it for actually dealing with anything that hits the board.
Okay, well, let's jump in and see how that ramp works for Yukuhiro.
All right, we're going to start out seeing Lucas Berthoud's hand. It's going to be 3 lands and 4 spells, notably a turn 2 Dreadhorde Invasion, provided it doesn't get countered in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and we do see the Lenor Elf as they draw for Yukuhiro. I was about to say we see Yukuhiro with not that many mana creatures, but does find an elf and has a Paradise Druid. So, the double ramp into 5 is available if there is not a Thought Erasure right away, or
and it looks
Dreadhorde
like
Invasion.
And it looks like Dreadhorde Invasion is going to be the priority here for Lucas Berthoud. And then, of course, Kibler, as you mentioned, looks like that Paradise Druid is going to get committed to the board. Yeah,
and crucially, there's no copies of Kaya's Wrath in Berthoud's deck. So, he can't clear off a board of a bunch of creatures here. Thought Erasure, though, this can take out the Oketra, which will stop the sort of chain of stuff coming down. Maybe he doesn't take the Ketra, though, because there's a Mortify in hand. He does choose to take it, though. Mortify could at least deal with it for now, but all the God Eternals do have the ability. You can sort of tuck them into your deck so they come back later. And what we see here is a Growth Chamber Guardian draw from Yukuhiro. That's a good draw. It's a very good draw. And we see Yukuhiro decides he activates it right away. And this is fairly crucial because it stops any kind of removal from taking it out in response to the Adapt. So he's guaranteed to get that additional copy of Growth Chamber Guardian. And the Hallowed Fountain, the draw for Berthoud. Going to go ahead and have that enter tapped. Not going to play the Hostage Taker this turn. He's going to leave up Mortify. Teferi's interesting, though. We see an attack from the Ghost Chamber Guardian, and it looks like Berthoud's just going to take the damage. And there's a couple of options here for Yukuhiro. He's going to take the damage from the land and just cast a 4/4 Hydroid Krasis, it looks like. He could play Teferi and force anything out that's going to come out and play the Growth Chamber Guardian. He can't use the Adapt in the same turn, so it's just a better use of his mana overall. Mortify going to target the Growth Chamber Guardian as opposed to the Hydroid Krasis. A lot of that has to do with Hostage Taker. The Hostage Taker on the Hydroid Krasis means that Berthoud has the ability to recast it later. And if the Hostage Taker does die, well, the Krasis, it comes into play and dies. So the Growth Chamber Guardian would actually come into play and just be able to readapt. That token's going to get in there. Yeah, continuing to grow from that Dreadhorde Invasion. 3 short power away from getting lifelink. And there is the opportunity to Teferi Time Raveler and bounce this Hostage Taker, but that does mean the Hydroid Krasis come back into play. It has lost its counters thanks to its trip to exile, so it just comes to play as a 0/0 and dies. And Berthoud gets the Hostage Taker back to target another one of
Yukuhiro's threats.
Yeah, and we're seeing the weakness of Bant Midrange specifically at dealing with creatures, right? It has, we mentioned, the Teferi Time Ravelers and Deputy Detention in order to deal with opposing creatures. Those are both pretty bad against Hostage Taker. If you remove your opponent's Hostage Taker, bounce it, or otherwise just get it out of play for whatever reason. If your Deputy dies, okay, it comes back as something else. And here, if you just bounce it, it's like, okay, you don't even get your Krasis back to your hand. If you don't bounce it, well, your opponent can play the Krasis. So kind of everything is just bad for Yukuhiro here.
Well, Yukuhiro does notably have a Frilled Mystic mana up, and Teferi Hero of Dominaria and that Hostage Taker Hydroid Krasis, the only spells for Lucas Berthoud.
Yeah, but the Hydroid Krasis still draws you cards and gains you life, even if it's countered. So you're going to see 2 cards drawn for Berthoud here, despite the Frilled Mystic, since it's a cast trigger on that Hydroid Krasis. So that Hostage Taker just did so much work. It got rid of the Hydroid Krasis, it gave a Hydroid Krasis trigger, and got the Frilled Mystic out of the hand. That's all Hostage Taker.
Hostage Taker might be the MVP for the Spark Split, considering what we saw last week
pretty
from
good
it
so
as
far.
well.
It's definitely been pretty good so far.
Teferi Time Raveler going to come down on Yukuhiro's side, and no more spells at instant speed for Lucas Berthoud.
It might be time to get rid of the army, because that is certainly getting pretty big and pretty scary with the Dreadhorde Invasion. Also, this does shut down any kind of instant speed shenanigans from Berthoud, but we look at his hand, he's, again, playing mid-range, right? He doesn't have a bunch of absorbs. He has a bunch of sorcery speed effects that Teferi doesn't really mess with in the same way.
Looks like Yukuhiro going to go into the tank a little bit here, try to figure out what he wants to do. And as Kibler, as you mentioned, he is going to bounce that army token and crucially draws Oketra.
But he has no more white mana. He only has the white mana from the Paradise Druid in order to cast the Oketra. I believe he has played a land this turn.
I think that is correct. Going to get that Growth Chamber Guardian from the trigger. Getting in with the 4/4 with Berthoud at 9. And that Dreadhorde Invasion is going to continue to chop down at his life total.
It is, yeah. And there are 6 lands in play for Berthoud here, so he does have the ability to Thought Erasure and enter the God Eternals here, which is still a little bit short of making that army lifelinking with the Dreadhorde Invasion, but next turn that Amass will tick it up.
Well, and again, for people that aren't as familiar with Dreadhorde Invasion, the token only gets lifelink when during combat, I believe. I don't think it always has lifelink, so gonna have to get in with that token in order to get some life back.
Lifelink doesn't really do much outside of combat anyway.
That's true.
All right, Thought Erasure does take the God Eternal Oketra here.
Thought Erasure, one of the crucial cards we were talking about earlier, getting to attack the hand and get one of those crucial game plan Oketras out of Yukuhiro's hand.
Yeah, Enter the God Eternals is going to smash that Growth Chamber Guardian. Does choose to send the mill at Yukuhiro, which can hit future Growth Chamber Guardians. That can actually be relevant.
And it looks like it actually did do that. Oh no, that's
what it just died. Yeah.
I'll protect you.
Will you protect me? Thank you, Teferi.
Teferi Time Raveler coming down. I'm gonna guess is probably gonna minus to bounce that token again.
Yep.
Before it gets to be a 6/6 and have lifelink.
Yeah, and right now, Yukuhiro is very much on the axis of trying to attack Berthoud's life total. You know, he is not really able to get his kind of fancy Oketra Planeswalker shenanigans done, and with that Dreadhorde Invasion, Berthoud, he needs some help, because a bunch of small creatures here, it's difficult for him to deal with them with Teferi. If he had like Hero of Precinct 1, Hero of Precinct 1 into something, but now, the Dreadhorde Invasion is not a particularly good blocker. Just keeps damaging. You can chump block each turn, essentially, but not really putting him in a great spot.
The draw for Berthoud this turn was the Thief of Sanity, along with the Teferi Hero of Dominaria in hand and a Godless Shrine. Yukuhiro, notably empty-handed, decided just to empty out the hand of creatures and say, hey, I've got an army here. You have an army of some kind, but not enough to really block my giant, massive creature.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting because both Teferi and Thief of Sanity offer an axis on which Berthoud can try to find additional ways to get back into this game. He's not dead on the board. He has the chump blocker from the Dreadhorde Invasion. Thief of Sanity actually is a very effective blocker against 3 Llanowar Elves. Paradise Druid isn't that big of a threat either. So he could use Teferi and bounce something that would leave Teferi vulnerable. He could use Teferi and just draw and see what he finds, but I think there's a very good chance we just see all of these cards played this turn. Oh, I wasn't even. I was
the
thinking.
Godless Shrine does.
I
have
had
to
it in my
pay
head
2
that was an
life,
isolated chapel, so that makes a lot more sense with the pause in the play.
Yep. Looks
So-
like still going to commit both cards to the board. Going to draw minus the Teferi to
Yep.
tuck the Growth Chamber Guardian.
Yep. Okay. This makes a ton of sense here, and yeah, this means that this is sort of a pincher, right? Berthoud is in a position where, or rather, Yukuhiro is in a position where he really wants to kill Teferi, and he really wants to try and kill Berthoud, sending the creatures at the Teferi. He can send all 3 Llanowar Elves, not risk the Paradise Druid because it would just die to the army.
So it looks
It's
like
I'm actually sort of
considering.
thinking, what does this look like if he just attacks face, right? If he sends everything at face, he does 2 damage, leaves Teferi up, but Berthoud's at 3 with Dreadhorde Invasion in play.
which means it's a 3-turn clock regardless.
Right, exactly. How much life gain is actually in Berthoud's deck? He does have Sorin, Vengeful Bloodlord, and 3 copies of Oath of Kaya, none of which we've seen. So I think that really explains the decision there to just, okay, I'm going to go to kill Teferi, but
Ooh, good draw.
well,
good draw
there's
for Berthoud.
another one. And the Thief of Sanity is going to get the hit if Berthoud wants.
So gonna commit the Teferi Hero of Dominaria to the board. Gonna draw a card. What is that card? It's a second Dreadhorde Invasion.
That's not
Probably
coming
not the
down.
card you want to see
No,
here.
that is not going to be played here. And Berthoud knows that one of the cards on the top of the deck is that Growth Chamber Guardian.
Right.
So if he attacks with Thief of Sanity, at bare minimum, he knows he can play a 2/2 for 2.
Right. So looks like Berthoud going to go into the tank here. Being at 4 life with the Dreadhorde Invasion on board, not the best situation, but looks like Thief of Sanity is going to go ahead and get in.
Yeah, the big question there, I think, was do I attack Teferi or do I attack the face?
2 Growth Chamber Guardians and a Vivian. Of course, going to take one of the Growth Chamber Guardians and throw it out there as a blocker. Untapping 2 lands and passing the turn. God Eternal Ketra, the draw for Yukuhiro.
Okay, that's a pretty big draw. Just not right now. It's not hugely impactful, but it can set up for powerful turns. And we're gonna see all 3 of these come in. They're just being sacrificed for 1 damage.
And of course, Berthoud in a position where he must block at least some of these creatures.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna see. Well, the question is, do we see Berthoud get to 2, which means he's dead in 2 turns of the invasion, or if he chooses to trade here? I would expect that we see the trade with the army. No.
Wow.
Ooh. Okay.
All right. So Berthoud down to just
He
2
goes to-
life points, and God Eternal Ketra are going to come down on Yukuhiro's side.
Wow, that was a pretty bold choice.
Another Dreadhorde Invasion.
And
Oh,
Berthoud has to hit something or he's dead.
Yeah.
Because he chose not to trade the Paradise Druid, he gave himself just a single turn window to find a way to gain life or win the game. And I'm pretty shocked, actually, by that decision, because a 2-turn window with Teferi in play is 4 cards and the Thief of Sanity. So now he has to draw something from Teferi or Thief of Sanity that gains him life. I don't even think there's anything from Thief of Sanity that gains him life here.
I don't think there's anything you could hear
From Yukuhiro's deck.
No.
There's no life gain. You can't even like hit a Vivian and then hit a creature because there's no creatures that just straight up gain life in his deck.
Berthoud's going to go into the tank here and consider his options. Teferi activation on the board, Thief of Sanity on the board. What do you do here if you're Berthoud?
Well, you got to attack with Thief of Sanity. You got to try and dig for a little bit of something. Maybe you find a Deputy Detention. He did. Deputy Detention can get rid of the Ketra before it becomes a problem. But the big problem is you're dead. That's the big problem. Well, and actually, just sort of thinking about it, Sorin.
You could also deputy. Oh no, it's a target non-land permanent your opponent controls.
Yeah, you can't deputy your own stuff. So you can't deputy your Dreadhorde Invasion, right? It's non-land permanent opponent controls. We saw the shenanigans with Hostage Taker. You can't Hostage Taker your thing either, so you can't even find a Hostage Taker in his deck. He basically has to hit Oath of Kaya or Sorin Bloodlord off of a Teferi activation, or he is dead during his upkeep.
Well, let's
Actually, no, he can also find Enter the God Eternals.
I believe that Berthoud also plays Mortify.
Oh, yep, he can mortify his
is
own
also an
Yep,
out.
okay, he can mortify it as well.
Or could
Who's
tuck
tucking
his
it?
own Dreadhorde Invasion.
I'm just, yeah. Duh, you have the ferry, you can tuck it. My brain was like fixated. Duh, yes.
I'm sure Twitch chat is like, why are they not?
Why
are they
you
not
so
just,
dumb?
Deputy Detention going to come down, take care of. Looks like the Teferi, not the God Eternal Oketra.
Well, the Teferi could bounce something.
Right.
And okay.
Sun Petal Grove.
This all makes
not
so
gonna
much
do
more
it.
sense with the
there's a reason why I don't play in the MPL. Let's put it that way. Growth Chamber Guardian going to block the God Eternal Oketra, essentially chump block. Sun Petal Grove doing Yukuhiro no favors. Oath
Ooh,
of
the
Kaya
Oath of
off
Kaya.
the top. So as it turns out, if
he had plus,
he had plus it, he would have found it. Yeah.
Jeez, why didn't you use plus to get Oath of Kaya?
I know. We found the line.
Yeah.
Thought Erasure going to make sure that the way is clear for that Oath of Kaya. Just going to see.
You don't want more of those.
Don't want more Dreadhorde invasions. That's going to go straight to the bin.
He knew that was there too from the Teferi tuck. So.
And couple options here.
I'm just laughing at myself right now. I'm just like, oh yeah, of course. You just have Teferi. You can do anything. You're Teferi.
Exactly.
And look, his avatar is even Teferi.
It's super appropriate.
He knew
I
that
feel
was
like
there.
He knew, of course.
But he should have known the Oath of Kaya was on top of the deck too in the future.
That's what's great about being a master of time, such as Teferi.
Exactly.
Thief of Sanity and Deputy Detention gonna get in here.
Interestingly, Oath of Kaya cannot hit the Paradise Druid. It does have hexproof when untapped. No hits for Thief of Sanity.
Wow.
You can take that, but you can't play it. You can only cast spells that are exiled with it.
Interestingly, it might have been better to leave those on top for Yukuhiro, who's currently flooded out on lands.
Not that you have that option.
Exactly. But again, still at 1 here. Believe that the Oath of Kaya must be played in order to gain some life. Dreadhorde Invasion is essentially a dead card right now. Untapping 2 lands with Teferi. Draw step is a Hallowed Fountain, yet another land for Yukuhiro, and God Eternal Oketra is going to still force Berthoud to chump block a little here, but another land is not really where Yukuhiro wants to be. He just wants to close out this game. Going to gain some life off of the Oath of Kaya trigger there.
Yeah, it may have looked like, oh, you want to attack face. It's like, well, if I attack face, then I can't protect my Teferi, and I don't actually have lethal with a block, thanks to the Oath of Kaya.
That attack with the Oath of Kaya on board just basically gained Berthoud a few extra points of life by sending the creature at the Teferi instead of face. All right, Glacial Fortress is the draw off of the Teferi +1. There's a Hero Precinct 1 in Berthoud's hand, which can, of course, chump block that God Eternal Oketra.
Well, crucially, if he does hit something, a multicolor spell here, does not, but does hit a Paradise Druid, which is hexproof, so there's no way to get around that as a blocker.
Committing Glacial Fortress and Hero Precinct 1 to the board. Here comes Paradise Druid as well. And it looks like Berthoud may have turned this game around.
Yeah, but by knowing what his Teferi does, unlike me.
Unlike both of us.
That was, I mean, like this, was very clearly a game that was on a very, very thin margins. Berthoud, he decided he wanted to keep that army around. It ultimately ended up being pretty important. That army got big enough. Actually, now that I think about it, it just ended up chump blocking the Oketra as a 3-3.
Sure. And it looks like Yukuhiro's had enough. He sees the writing on the wall. That's game 1 going to go to Berthoud.
Yeah, and very, very important that just how difficult those creatures were for Yukuhiro to deal with. Specifically, the Hostage Taker was a huge problem for him, and that's one of the very powerful features of this mid-range Esper deck that Berthoud's playing. And we're seeing Yukuhiro sideboarding now, getting some baffling ends in his deck. This is as a nod to the importance of dealing with the Hostage Takers. Actually, you can't hit a Hostage Taker with that, can you? It's specifically importance of hitting the Hero of Precinct 1.
Yeah.
Hero of Precinct 1 is a card that can just totally take over the game if it's able to stick for a turn or 2, thanks to the powerful multicolor spells that are in Berthoud's deck.
Yukuhiro bringing in, of course, the Baffling and some other interesting cards in his sideboard. The Thorn Lieutenant in particular is something that I see.
And this sideboarding is something that's very interesting. He's taking out all the copies of Vivien Champion of the Wilds, and this is a nod to the fact that the Espert Midrange deck puts pressure on you, that you can't just afford to sit back and spend your mana on a vulnerable Planeswalker. I'm a little surprised to see the Growth Chamber Guardians look like they're coming out.
And the Deputy Detention's also coming out. Yeah, lots of interesting sideboarding choices, but I'd expect no less from somebody like Ken Yukuhiro.
Yeah, this is This is a peculiar set of choices to me.
Brought in a negate as well, a singleton negate out of the 4 on the board. Berthoud, looks like he has kept all the Dreadhorde invasions in, taken out Moment of Craving.
I think one Dreadhorde invasion looks like it came out. He does have both copies of his Time Wipes in here. A little bit of an awkward card in a matchup where your opponent, has Frilled Mystic. Trying to invest in any kind of expensive sorcery can be difficult, but you do have the Teferi Time Raveler, who can really mess with your opponent's ability to use counter magic to stop your expensive threats.
Well, let's get into game 2. Lucas Berthoud versus Ken Yukuhiro. Yukuhiro on top, Berthoud on the bottom. 4 land hand from Berthoud. Gonna snap keep it with that Thief of Sanity on turn 3.
Thief of Sanity is huge here. And
Yukuhiro mulling to 5, too.
Thief of Sanity with Sorin means that if the Thief of Sanity dies, you can just bring it right back. There are baffling ends that Berthoud does know that Yukuhiro is bringing in, which will give him the ability to deal with Thief of Sanity without allowing it to really come back.
But take a look at that draw from Berthoud, Deputy of Detention, which can take care of multiple baffling ends if he so chooses. Llanowar Elf is going to get in there, and it looks like probably another Llanowar Elf is going to get committed to the board here. No land draw there, but did make his land drop. So and, Deputy Detention gonna get a 2-for-1 on the Llanowars.
That is pretty huge here. The Deputy Detention hitting both Llanowar Elves. There is baffling end to hit the Deputy Detention, which is pretty important here. And
crucially, Yukuhiro also drew his land for his land drop for the turn.
Yep. It does slow Yukuhiro down tremendously, though, because if it were not for that for that Deputy Detention, he would have just been able to play Nissa that turn.
Here comes Thief of Sanity.
Now there's a decision point for Yukuhiro here. Does he baffling end this Thief of Sanity, or is he just playing Nissa who shakes the world? And it looks like, considering he's tapping a bunch of land, it's going to be Nissa.
Right, you are, Kibler. He's, well, it looks like Yukuhiro's considering it. He hasn't quite cast the spell yet, dragging it out to the play area. And there it is, going to commit to Nissa, who shakes the world. Here's the thing, Nissa untaps a land. Nissa untapping a land will allow Yukuhiro to also play the baffling end to deal with the Thief of Sanity if he so chooses.
Yep. Oh no, it doesn't. It doesn't tap it. Yeah.
And it gives it vigilance.
Yep. So yeah, it's going to be able to attack and play the baffling end.
Crucially, though,
the tap part of this. I have no idea what 5-cost Planeswalkers do anymore. Just missing everything on all of them.
Crucially, Yukuhiro is now empty-handed, though, and while he might have a board presence, grip full for Berthoud, and is going to be able to get rid of a land.
Yeah, but with the 2 Llanowar Elves, 3 other land, it's really not that terrifying. Ooh. Teferi going to be able to bounce that army, and then Nissa continue the march of the lands.
Yukuhiro considering, as always. Gonna cast that Teferi Time Raveler. Right on schedule, as he says. Bouncing the army, drawing an Incubation Druid. Looks like he's deciding which land to select. Temple Garden going to become animated. It's going to be 5 damage right to the face. And Incubation Druid comes out after combat due to the Vigilance.
It may look a bit weird. It's like, wait, how do you play Teferi for 2? How do you play that for 1? Nissa, who shakes the world, does have a passive that makes Forest tap for an additional green mana. I know that one, that part of its ability. Forgot the untap part.
Another 2 mana from that Nissa ability, tapping the Singleton Forest. Nissa gonna untap that land, put some counters on it.
And this allows Incubation Druid activation and a bunch of stuff coming into the red zone.
3 power creatures everywhere you can look. The lone Thief of Sanity on Berthoud's side. Plus Teferi, 9 damage coming in at your face.
Yeah, and this is really kind of the opposite of what we saw last game, where Yukuhiro was sort of struggling to put too much together, just kept getting answered by Berthoud. Now Nissa is just turning all of those lands, even though he has fairly threat light draw overall. Nissa has made his mana sources into huge threats. And even if that Nissa leaves play, those lands are still threats. So Teferi as the draw for Berthoud is usually a powerful card, but well, you Teferi, you know, you're going to tuck that Nissa and then just still get attacked for lethal next turn.
And yeah, it's a tough spot for Berthoud, especially considering that Nissa, if Yukuhiro so chooses, can -8 and get all the forests out of his deck into play.
Also, by the way, Teferi is non-land permanent, so you can't even tuck a forest or the Temple Garden. You could tuck like the Incubation Druid. Thief of Sandy's going to come in, finds Hydra Krasis.
And God Eternal Ketra and a Breeding Pool. Breeding Pool, of course, can't be played by Thief of Sanity, but either of those other two cards are fair game.
I'm just sort of looking at the board. Has he played a land this turn? So he could, if he has not, either way, he can Krasis for 4 or 5, which gains him 2 life, puts him to 7, puts a, but is Teferi at 2 or 3 right now? I think Teferi is at 2.
2, yeah.
So there's no bounce threat here. Either way, he's gaining 2 life, drawing 2 cards, going to 7.
And has a blocker.
And yeah, he gets crucially a blocker that survives blocking a 3/3 land. But there's still another land being animated by Nissa next turn. So you go to 7, you have 2 blockers, you still take, I believe, 7.
Yep.
If my math checks out, I'm not sure Krasis really gets you out of this.
Well, it looks like only going to do it for 3 here.
I was hoping to draw like exactly Moment of Craving, I think.
Yep. Drew a Glacial Fortress off of the Hydroid Krasis trigger. Paradise Druid is the draw for Yukuhiro. Going to go ahead and commit that to the board. Why not? Nissa going to animate another Temple Garden, 2/3
Continue
Temple
shaking
Gardens.
the world. She's shaking it, you know, she's kind of shaking it up, and not working too well for Berthoud here. He's getting...
And that is going to be everything crashing into the red zone. Hydroid Krasis being blocked, Incubation being dropped,
and
that's
still
going to go
8
game
damage.
2 to Ken Yukuhiro off of the back of Nissa, who shakes the world, animating those lands.
And we've seen a lot of powerful Planeswalkers from War of the Spark really defining a lot of those games. And you know, I think it's pretty obvious that Nissa was the key card in that game, really just turning an otherwise mana-heavy draw for Yukuhiro into a win.
And looks like Time Wipes are going to come out for Lucas Esper Berthoud, considering other sideboard options. Of note, both Mortifies in Berthoud's deck came out for game 2.
And looks like he actually did not have any copies of Moment of Craving to draw there either. So maybe he was looking to draw like a Hero of Precinct 1 to chump block.
Duress is coming back in.
Yeah, crucially, now Berthoud is on the play. So he gets to play, you know, a little bit less reactively, which I think is part of the reason, well, I don't want both Time Wipes, because I don't want to be going first and have a hand with Time Wipe and not really be able to do anything. But looking at how that game played out, it would be kind of great to have a Time Wipe against an opponent who animates all their land.
Yeah,
with,
that's for
with
sure.
Nissa. And, you know, that game, there wasn't much playing around Time Wipe from Yukuhiro. And typically, you know, in this sort of matchup, like, again, expensive sorceries can be tough against an opponent who has stuff like Frilled Mystic, but when you have Teferi Time Raveler, you can sort of lock out their answers to your big swing cards.
Berthoud has a pretty good hand here with a turn 2 Thought Erasure and a Hostage Taker in hand, as well as 2 copies of Teferi Hero of Dominaria. Yukuhiro going to throw his first hand back, and we'll see what happens. Down to 6, a Nissa who shakes the world, and 5 lands.
Yeah, it's obviously a powerful card we saw last game, but not powerful enough to sort of solo the game as your only threat, especially against an opponent you know has 4 Thought Erasure.
Going down to 5, 2 lands. Baffling End, God Eternal, Ketra, and Incubation Druid gonna be good enough. Draws a forest for the first turn. Lands from both players. See a Drowned Catacomb on turn 2 for Berthoud. Of course, into a Thought Erasure. If I'm guessing, I'm probably gonna say God Eternal, Ketra is gonna hit the bin, but all of those cards seem pretty attractive.
Yeah, a 2-land hand, you know, hitting your opponent's Incubation Druid makes it very difficult for them to ever play a Ketra. There's also not even a white source, right? So Incubation Druid is currently your opponent's 3rd mana source and only white mana, and a hand with 2 white cards, one of which costs 5 and double white. Gonna go through
Decides on
Ketra
the God Eternal,
regardless.
Ketra. There is a Hallowed Fountain in play, so that is that was the
You
first
are
white
correct.
source, I
Yeah,
think.
you are correct. Never mind. There is another white source.
Hinterland Harbor into Incubation Druid is the play for Yukuhiro. A second Thought Erasure drawn for Berthoud, and this is pretty backbreaking, Kibler.
Yeah, the second Ketra there, is a pretty good draw for Berthoud to try and, or rather for Yukuhiro to try and find another threat, but gonna get stripped of the hand right away.
Third land and another Hinterland Harbor, the draw for Yukuhiro.
And I mean, this is just hostage taker on you, Incubation Druid, I think. Gonna take away Yukihiro's mana. You know there's only one unknown card in the hand, unless that's Frilled Mystic. There's nothing that's gonna stop you here. Baffling End only hits creatures that cost 3 or less, so this this hostage taker is not going to leave the board, and that means Berthoud can get himself an Incubation Druid if he wants.
A lone Llanowar Elf, the play for Yukuhiro, who's pretty far behind at this point. Isolated Chapel, the draw for Berthoud, going to come into play,
yeah,
of course. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, going to get slammed immediately.
And it's pretty hard to beat Teferi when you are this far behind. The fact that Yukuhiro doesn't really have a great way to remove this hostage taker means that very likely will just be an Incubation Druid that is gone forever. Okay, Tristani is at least a thing that does a thing. If you bounce it, it does leave some bodies in play and continues to make more. Even Enter the God Eternals at least leaves the tokens in play.
The card, though, that was drawn from Teferi was, of course, D-Spark. Which Spark? D-Spark.
I mean, this is an option here, but there's also just Enter the God Eternals to hit the Tristani. You can save the D-Spark if you want for something stronger and get your big swing of the Enter the God Eternals at sorcery speed right now, and still leave up D-Spark with your Teferi.
Berthoud gonna mill Yukuhiro and take out that Tristani Discordant, play a Watery Grave tapped, and pass the turn, untapping 2 lands, once again keeping that D-Spark up. And Temple Garden, draw for Yukuhiro, no help there.
And we're actually seeing a bit of the, I think the sort of problem with Yukihiro's build of having so many mana creatures and really being reliant on a small number of particularly large threats. He got Thought Erasure twice. He lost his big threats, and now he's just got a bunch of mana. And I'm still a little suspect of his choice to sideboard out his Growth Chamber Guardians, because he's just sitting here with a bunch of mana. Those could be pretty powerful. Maybe they're not enough to really deal with your opponent's board. But speaking of dealing with your opponent's board, Liliana makes this a lot harder to ever deal with. And yeah, Yukihiro's like, I've had enough. And it will be Lucas Esper Berthoud, who is the winner of this first match of the Ruby division.
He went for his namesake, and it paid off. I think that's the answer here. Go with what's in the stars. You can't fight it. But it is interesting. You were talking about how Yukuhiro is a very deliberate player and takes their time. And I love when you see the personality of a player come out through the way they click around the platform.
We have a lot of characters in the MPL, not just Ken Yukuhiro, but Canister also. Big character, uses the emotes, likes to click around a lot. Always a lot of fun to watch play Magic the Gathering Arena.
That's exactly who I was thinking of when I mentioned seeing a personality come out in the game. Now, we're towards the end of our Ruby division recap for the day, but let's go hop on over and see how the Ruby division stacked up.
Hey everybody, Maria here to report on the Ruby division of the MPL, the best division, no matter what Rich tells you. I'm back from the UK this week, and I'm actually at Wizards of the Coast headquarters, which you can see evidenced by this awesome conference room I'm in, and the fact that I gave a certain dragon a high five. I only had 2 matches this week, and you already saw Yukuhiro bring the spice, so I'm about to tell you about the other one. My other match this week was Reed Duke versus Carlos Ramao, Azorius Aggro versus Esper Control. Now last week, 10 players brought Azorius Aggro to the table. This week, Reed Duke was the only one left. Now, either he knows something everybody else doesn't, or everybody else knows something he doesn't. It's got to be one or the other. Game 1 was a story of the board wipes, and if you're thinking that doesn't sound super great for Duke, you'd be right. Reed does an excellent job here setting up the early game using 4 creatures to convoke out Venerated Loxodon, #Noise, but all that hard work goes to waste when some ghost assassin decides to get all mad. But it's not over for Duke just yet. He rises like a rekindling phoenix from the ashes and somehow manages to build his board back up again thanks to a little help from History of Benalia. But once again, his dreams are dashed by a well-timed Kaya's Wrath. Game 1 goes to Ramao. In Game 2, Reed once again builds up his board really well, and there's an interesting decision here where he uses his Dovin's Veto to counter Carlos's Teferi Time Raveler. It turns out to be an excellent decision, and Duke never loses control of this game despite being the aggro deck. In Game 3, it's fairly straightforward. Duke is able to pressure Ramao's life total throughout the entire game, finally finishing him off with everyone's favorite art from Dominaria. Yep, it's History of Benalia once again to save the day. So Duke wins, putting him to 2-1 in the division. Ramao, unfortunately, falls to 0-2. Looking forward to next week, lots of exciting stuff. Can Huey Jensen remain undefeated and start off 3-0? Well, he's got to go through Ken Yukuhiro first, who's undoubtedly going to bring some spicy deck, which I'm really excited to see. Reed Duke will also have to face him. Ramao heads down to the 0-2 bracket to face the other player in my division, also starting off 0-2, Ben Stark, to fight for their first win in the division. All right, there's a quick look at your Ruby division for this week in the MPL. See you next week.
Thanks to Maria for taking us through Duke versus Romeo and that win from Reed Duke. Very cool to see the white aggro.
Yeah, I really like these sort of behind-the-scenes pieces we have of the matches we don't get a chance to see completely on camera to see what exactly happened. Like Maria said, Reed was the only person who really brought a white aggro deck this week, and it seemed like it paid off for him. So nice to see that actually, get a chance to shine on camera.
Yeah, well, compliments to our Magic team for putting those together because we're enjoying them for everything that we can't see here. So let's take a look at the standings for Ruby. Ooh, now Huey Jensen was here last week. He actually gets to sit this week out and hang out for a minute with his 2-0 from last week playing 2 matches. But there's Berthoud sitting right under him. Yeah,
and worth noting, this is the division that had 2 players who are new to the league added this week who have not yet played any games. So we see Jessica Stefan and Jane Mikkonen, also known as Savic, who are still going to play catch-up games in the future to get to the same win-loss, or at least same overall games played as the rest of their division.
Yes, I believe we're going to see their games in week 4, and right now we're in week 2. Jane Mikkonen and Savic, as he's better known, is a really prolific Twitch streamer that is really fun to watch. So, recommend checking him out. Are there other things that you're excited about?
Well, that's Ruby.
Yeah, that's Ruby.
We had a little bit of bridge division thanks to a couple of missing matches throughout the week.
But no less exciting. But yeah. Really excited to see Reed Duke bring back that Azorius aggro deck, really stick to his guns. Exciting to watch. Good stuff.
Sharp but sweet.
And I'm curious, he tends to practice with William Jensen, despite the two of them being in the same division. They did bring identical decks last week. I wonder if Huey would have also been on Azorius aggro this week. Reed wouldn't have been the only one.
Ooh, hard to say. I guess we'll find out next week what Jensen's been cooking up. But right now, we've got a quick break, and then we'll come back to you with our 3rd division.